Sokka added much to the dynamic of Team Avatar, but it often seemed like fans took him for granted.
After all, he was the only member of the group who couldn't bend.
But that doesn't mean that he was useless.
Let's see why we should respect Sokka's contribution just as much as everyone else's.
He was more than just comic relief.
Sokka was always the funniest guy on the team. If it weren't for him, the Avatar series would have been quite dull.
Sokka had a lot of hilarious scenes in the series.
Like the scene where he and Momo got high on cactus juice. Being funny was an essential trait of his, and it's actually to the merit of Jack Decina, the voice actor behind him. According to an initial plan, Sokka was supposed to be dry and serious, but Decina gave him the vibrant personality we all know and love.
Yes, Sokka was definitely funny, but it doesn't mean that we should dismiss him as a second-rate sidekick character. After all, being funny doesn't mean he was silly. Sokka could be serious when it was needed, and he was earnest, tough, and strong-willed. He was always fiercely protective of his sister, and later also became protective of Aang. He actually played an essential role in the series, and we'll talk about it soon. But first, let's see how. He had to grow up very quickly. Have you ever thought about how old Sokka was in The Last Airbender, Mr. Fullylover?
I only remember that he was older than Katara.
He was only 15 years old. What were you doing at that age, Mr. Fullylover?
Mostly fanboying over Kermit the Frog from The Muppet Show?
Not surprised. And Sokka, at such a tender age, was already so mature. Sure, all of the Team Avatar members were only kids, but even at the very beginning, we could see how adult Sokka seemed to be. Actually, circumstances made him grow up way too soon. He was only a kid when a Fire Nation raid took away his mother, and his father left to protect his tribe. Sokka turned out to be the oldest male in the whole tribe and automatically became its leader.
It's pretty hard to imagine yourself being a leader of an entire tribe when you're only a teen.
That's right, and this is the reason why Sokka was so mature, way beyond his years. But it doesn't mean that he didn't have a softer side. Sokka was good at poetry.
Wait a minute, Mr. Scoffer. Are you sure you're talking about our no-nonsense Sokka?
Yes, my dear friend. He had a much more versatile personality than you think. Did you forget the episode The Tale of Ba Sing Se, where Sokka took part in a haiku competition? To everyone's surprise, Sokka turned out to be very good at poetry, and he even went toe-to-toe with a haiku instructor during the contest. He nearly won, but was dismissed due to accidentally adding an extra syllable to the end of his haiku. There and then, Sokka gave up his short-lived love for poetry. But loyal fans of the series still remember him as a great poet and a guy who has both brains and brawn.
Oh, this is so exciting, Mr. Scoffer! And now, let me add something I recall very well about Sokka. He prevented the team's internal collapse. You probably remember that, even though Katara and Toph were part of one team and shared one goal, they had two different personalities. And this inevitably led to them having arguments quite frequently. Katara was nurturing and assertive, and she always tried to prevent the group from making decisions that she saw as immoral or unwise. And in the meantime, Toph was fiercely independent and stubborn, and she hated it when someone tried to boss her around. After one of the heated arguments between the two young ladies, Sokka decided to step up and talk to Toph about it. He explained to her that although his sister could be annoying, she always meant well. By having this open conversation, he managed to bridge the gap between Katara and Toph, and, for the most part, end their feud.
That's an excellent point, Mr. Fullylover. But I'll do you one better and recall how Sokka knocked down the Combustion Man.
Or, as he also called him, Sparky Boob Man.
This huge guy was hired by Zuko to capture and assassinate Aang. He had a unique trait because he could detonate massive explosions from his third eye tattoo using only his mind.
And, apart from that, he was also enormous and had metal limbs.
Given how powerful the Combustion Man was, it seemed like it would be much easier for any other character to beat him in a battle. And yet, neither Benders nor the Avatar himself could manage this task. Sokka was the one to do it, with just the help of his trusty boomerang.
He hit the Combustion Man in his third eye, thus blocking his chi. When the assassin attempted to strike with a blow, he caused a massive explosion that destroyed much of the surrounding area and killed him.
You might think that it was pure luck, but given how good a tactician Sokka was, it probably wasn't. And yet, the boomerang wasn't Sokka's only weapon. Although even he referred to himself as a guy with a boomerang, he was actually much more than that. He also became a guy with a sword at some point. Feeling rather useless compared to all the benders in his team, Sokka decided that he had to master his sword fighting skills, and even became an apprentice of the Fire Nation's sword master Piandao.
It happened when they all disguised themselves as people from the Fire Nation.
Sokka's weapon of choice became a jet-black meteorite sword, and he mastered it perfectly. Although he couldn't defeat his master in a duel, Piandao said that Sokka was so good that one day he would become a better swordsman than he was.
Besides this, Sokka also mastered other weapons. Throughout the series, we saw him using clubs, a machete, and spears in a battle.
He also became reasonably adept in hand-to-hand combat after training with Suki of the Kyoshi warriors. And yet, Sokka was more than a warrior. The guy also proved himself as a great strategist and a critical thinker. Plus, he was an intelligent individual, keen on science and engineering. Sokka was the one to solve the dilemma of the hot air balloon, and he even managed to use optical illusions to help Katara look like she was an earthbender. Plus, he was usually the mastermind behind all the most successful strategies. Among other things, he planned the final attack on Ozai, which eventually helped Aang defeat the Fire Lord and restore peace among the four nations.
Sokka was so incredibly smart that he even managed to join the Order of the White Lotus, an elite secret society of the most intelligent people from all of the four nations. And I can tell you one more thing about him, Mr. Scoffer. Sokka wasn't as stubborn as he seemed. Sure, he was headstrong, but at the same time, he was quite flexible. For example, remember how much he despised the Fire Nation because its people took his parents away from him? He had every right to want nothing to do with them. And yet, when they were forced to hide, he agreed to disguise himself as one of the Fire Nation people, because he knew that it was essential for Team Avatar's mission.
And more importantly, Mr. Fullylover, he was able to accept the reformed Prince Zuko, who had followed them and tried to kill Aang throughout the show's run. Even when he still didn't trust him, he agreed to accept him into the team because Aang asked him to. And eventually, Sokka began trusting Zuko and formed a strong partnership with him. If you think about it, all these skills showed Sokka as a true leader of Team Avatar. You might think that it was Aang because he was the Avatar and the main character. But while Aang was focusing on mastering the four elements and fulfilling his mission as the Avatar, Sokka was the one who kept an eye on his younger friends. And as I've already said, planned out the team's essential strategies. Unlike others, he never forgot that they were fighting a war and never messed around, just having fun. Although his bossy attitude initially annoyed everyone, especially Katara, his ability to mature as a leader and as a person earned him the respect of his team members.
At some point in the third season, Team Avatar even realized how badly they needed Sokka. They said that they weren't only bored without him, but they also couldn't decide what to do.
And when the battle was on, Sokka did exactly what was needed of him. He went to the front lines, leading the assault, and becoming the leader in the Day of Black Sun. Do you still think of him as a klutzy kid from the Southern Water Tribe? Then see how. His post-war role was essential. After becoming a hero, just like everyone else in Team Avatar, and showing himself as a great leader throughout his life, it's evident that Sokka didn't sink into oblivion. Along with his friends, he actively participated in the Harmony Restoration movement. He was the chieftain of his tribe, and later on, he also became chairman of the United Republic Council.
Even after Sokka passed away, he was never forgotten. In the Legend of Korra, we can see the statue of him holding his beloved weapon, his trusty boomerang. So, it's clear that his memory and contribution were honored by the subsequent generations.
Do you want to learn more about what Sokka and other Team Avatar members did after The Last Airbender was over?
Then watch another fascinating video on our fabulous channel!
And what do you think about Sokka? Did you notice all these remarkable traits he possessed, or do you still think of him as a comic relief character?
Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to Cartoon Junkies!
Bye.